Cursor IDE is a tool that I use a lot for my development processes and to do coding or assist with coding. And in this video, I'm not going to talk about that, but rather to talk about unconventional uses of the agent mode for doing other things. My name's James Stone. I live in Frascati, Italy, and I recently moved here from Finland, from Helsinki. And one of the daunting tasks I've taken on, because I'm currently unemployed or for whatever reason, there's this delineation in the family, is to deal with all of the Italian paperwork and bureaucracy. And it's complicated and challenging in its own ways. And this video isn't about that, but more about how I'm using AI tools to help assist me in the process. It doesn't mean that it's taking care of everything end to end, but rather that I'm using it as a tool to improve the quality of my output, meaning it's less prone to errors, to try to research and determine common pitfalls and mistakes, and also to add additional information that's supplementary, that's maybe not asked for, that can help me to smooth things out with, I don't know if you call them bureaucrats, that's one way to call them, but people who are working in these agencies. And it's not really their problem that it's paper intensive and a bit labor intensive. That's just how things are working here. And just to make comparisons to Finland, everything in Finland is done electronically, mostly, not always, and not for all people, but generally once you get established. And so what I'm doing right now, which is going through an immigration process, in Finland would all be done electronically through a system called Enter Finland. Now, what I'm talking about, even if you're using electronic means, is still going to be useful. Why? Because just because it's electronic doesn't mean there's not bureaucracy. And it doesn't mean you can't make mistakes that can deny your application or create situations where you have to do a lot of explanation because you answered something incorrectly, spelled something wrong, have a typo or something like that. So what is it that I'm doing? Right now I'm applying for this thing. It's basically a resident permit in Italy based on EU family member status. And I a little bit missed the ball in Finland to become a citizen. I lived there long enough, did all the right things, but never had an opportunity to study the language well enough. I don't know if it's the correct way to say it. To study well enough to pass this UKI test. I don't know that it's an indication of your language ability in Finnish. It's just a test, like the SAT or the GRE, and it's complicated and not indicative of normal communications that you have on a daily basis in Finland. It's a weird test. So anyways, I didn't pass. And even if I had, the timing is such that I've moved now to Italy. So what does that mean? Well, my family all are citizens of Finland. And that's fantastic, I think. But what it means for me is I got a ton of paperwork to do. And it's complex and difficult to solve, difficult to figure out even what to do. And it reminds me of when I lived in France, circa 2013, and had to jump through a lot of similar hoops. Luckily, I'm the only person in the family who has to do that. So that's a little bit context on the situation. So initial research with ChatGPT, which I think is a great way to explore these things, sometimes gives a lot of false positives or positive negatives or information it's maybe not necessarily fully incorrect, but it's not well thought through because it doesn't really reason or think, so to speak, like a person would. So what do? Originally, I thought I had to go to this place called, I think it's called Cursor. It's a immigration point, which is really crazy. It's in Rome, in the middle of nowhere, in this industrial area. There's only one bus that goes there, and it's like going to a military compound. I thought this was going to be the only way to do it, but I found out there's another process, at least for people who are applying based on EU family member ties. And there was another option, and I was able to find this. How? And I think this is a pretty good thing to have in your toolkit by assembling a ChatGPT deep research thread and doing that through the current thread I was using for my research and asking questions. How can I get around the situation of not being able to set an appointment, of having to spend hours and hours in a queue with uncertainty, and what else can I do? So the deep research thread is something that's really nice because it is an agent and it tends to expose different lines of thinking. And I think it does this more through a brute force method because it takes maybe 20, 30 minutes. But it usually gets to better answers for questions like this. So I found out through the post office, there's a kit you can ask for if you happen to know this coded terminology of what to ask for. And so I went and got the kit. Now this is a paper kit, and it reminds me again, I don't even remember how long ago this was, 15 or 20 years ago, when we went through the immigration process for my partner in the United States. And it was very challenging. Everything, paper forms, paper instructions. And I remember it was very important for us at that time because there was a big consequence. The consequence was non-resident tuition for a certain amount of time if we didn't get it submitted in a certain time frame. Anyways, it was like 50-page application, and submitted it, thought everything was going well, was ready to reap the benefits of the reduced tuition rate, only to find out later the entire thing was rejected, was sent back to me because one box I didn't check. What box was this? That my wife was not my adopted child. And this is the risk, right? I don't know I have such risk right now, but the risk is if you make a mistake, even a simple one, they don't just call you and ask you sometimes. They just reject it outright. And you start all over, and you lose the money and the cost of shipping it and all those other things. So, what to do about this thing? It's an envelope with a small, tiny form with these block letters, very similar to, at the time, the U.S. immigration forms that I had to fill out. And a whole set of tables and supplementary information, and a huge instruction book. And the instructions look to me, because I don't read Italian very well, like something out of a law book, almost incomprehensible. So, what did I do? First, I scanned everything because I knew it's too difficult for me to deal with this using Google Translator, looking at things piecemeal with a video. They're going to take forever, and it's going to be cognitively very complex task to do. It's too reliant on memory and process. Too much room for error. So I had that original ChatGPT thread. I exposed to them the issue. I have my 3.5-year-old son at home, recovering from the stomach flu. He's very fussy and interrupts me maybe every 3 to 7 minutes, usually by screaming. So I want to offload as much of this detail-oriented things as possible to the agent. And it had all sorts of really specific ideas, what technologies to use, how to go about it. And I told it, keep all the technology open-ended. Let's just talk about the process. And so I started with that prompt, and right away I could see a problem with it. So I added a few lines of specificity that helped. Now, I'd like to say I could write a prompt and it could get through the whole process like this for me, and everything's great. But no. It took many, many successive iterations and feedback from me to get to a point where things were either understandable in the process of what it was doing or providing output that I was looking for. One other big thing I want to point out, I think it was about halfway or 2/3 the way through the process, I inspected the code a lot more closely and saw it was cheating. It just hard-coded what looked like form, because I gave it access to a couple of them, and the information. It hard-coded it, and it was just generating nonsensical fake things and telling me to add a API key or something like that later. Some really fake, what looks like a real product, but not working at all. In the end, I complained about this and had it revise things. What did I do? I got it to auto-rotate the images so they were formatted correctly, vertically. Otherwise, OCR fails and gives you garbage. Now, it built a system, but it's not perfect. It didn't work. So I gave up on that. Quick manual intervention. I fixed the ones that can't be rotated correctly, which is forms, which apparently is a difficult problem to solve. And that part doesn't work. Now, the big thing was to be able to OCR everything and get everything into markdown files and get it in a structured and organized way, all in Italian, as it was, even with the mistakes. And I was able to finally do that. And it works clean, and it's also repeatable if I have a similar process with paper-based bureaucracy. Or it could be PDFs or other documents. It should work the same kind of way. So from that, I was able to create a new agent thread. This agent thread, I gave it the specificity of my problem, why I'm applying, who I am, some specifics about my certain issue, and it was able to put together a very complete document about how to fill out every form, what the numbers were in the forms, the pages, what the set in Italian, and also what the English translation was and what should be put there. And it helps me to understand what things are critical, what things need to be skipped, and this kind of thing. And I dug a bit deeper because I thought at this point, this looks good, but let's look at what are common pitfalls. And so I had it expose a good search. And I think Cursor IDE is a really good tool for this because it does many, many searches of different types of keywords. You can see what it's doing. It's more transparent. And you can maybe revise or change things as you go. So a lot of those things were kind of good information to know, but didn't really affect any of the output. And the final thing I had to do was to split this huge document up into like about 5 or 6 documents based on the topic, which would help me to understand the specific pieces of what I needed to do. And with that, I'm still in the process, so I'm not complete with it, but now I have a structured roadmap in English with Italian names and the numbers correlating of step-by-step how I can go through in a linear process to fill out the entire form. And this is gold because who knows how long it might have taken me to fill out this form, and I might have made mistakes because there's some things that are not very clear, at least to me, even though I've done some of these forms before. Specifically, things to leave blank, what kinds of situations or additional documents I should include and why, based on my special situation, because I have a special permit in Finland, which is called an EU long stay permanent resident. I don't know what you would call it, permit or something. So that's it. So now I continue the process, and I've got a really specific, streamlined guideline of how to do it. Now, should I automate all the things? Probably not. It's probably diminishing returns now once I got past the things I needed to do. And now it's just about filling it out and submitting it. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it for anything else, but I might go and scan the final output and have it review it, but there's some privacy issues there. So I'm not too sure if I want to do that, or maybe I want to look at using a locally hosted LLM to do that. But that's more just a final check, and probably I'll have it done by a human, by my partner or someone else if I have time. So that's it. Are you using Cursor IDE for any non-code related tasks? I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you are. Thanks for watching.